Hey, sweetie.
Hey, hon.
What's for dinner?
A big potato.
A baked potato?
A big potato. Huh. Does this mole look okay to you?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of Carolyn Talks. I am your host, Carolyn Hines, film culture critic and journalist. And this is the YouTube channel / podcast where I speak to film creatives around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today I'm very happy to be joined by writer, director, and actress Hannah Cheeseman to talk about her newest short film, Marriaginalia, which is about a couple who is kind of stuck in a rut and doesn't know that they're stuck in a rut, and they ignore the glaring, festering, gross signs that things just aren't right in their marriage, but they're happy to go along with it. And it's a short film. It's just over 3 minutes long, and it's in three concise acts. But I think these three short acts say so much about human nature and the dangers of getting comfortable. But before we get into all of that, thank you so much to Hannah for joining me today. Thank you, Hannah.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I first have to ask you, I usually like to ask my guests what inspires them to become filmmakers. What inspired you to become a director and a writer and actress? Because you do act as well. And I have seen Star Trek Discovery, so I know you were also in that, and in a bunch of other like Canadian productions, both independent and commercial as well. But what got you into filmmaking and film industry?
Yeah, I mean, I started way back when, to your point, with acting. Like I started as a dancer way back when, and then I moved into performance. And then I actually, from there, basically in my 20s, I was like, because I'd always written like plays, like one act plays, that kind of a thing. But when I graduated from all of my schooling and I started to audition for stuff very quickly, I was like, oh, man, I don't know. I don't know about this. So I basically started writing for film and television after that, or, short films, because it was just a way to be creative in a different way, in a way that wasn't just interpretive, but generative. And it was actually my first short film that commercial like casting agent said, like, so are you directing it? And I said, no, I'm not directing it. I don't know how to direct. And he was like, sure you do. You just, turn on some TV, turn on a movie, turn off the sound, see what the coverage is. That's what you do. And take it from a guy to just be like, you can just do it.
Right.
So that's what I started to do. I just started to do it in my 20s and kind of haven't stopped. Yeah.
Hmm. And do you think you have a style? Because in watching Marriaginalia and I was watching your other previous film, The Boathouse, I was picking up a bit of a sense of like you like a bit of the outside the box kind of versions of storytelling, but also like having a kind of like I think a particular aesthetic when it comes to films like this, where you get to be a bit more creative, where you are able to like take things just a bit further than expected, right? And the reason I say that is in watching Boathouse, it's a thriller. It's a bit of a psychological thriller, and it deals with this woman who enters fugue states because she was in an accident. And clearly the medication she's taking, I was like, girl, why are you swallowing these pills at all random times?
Yeah.
But I kind of got this sense from both that and even from Marginalia, like you like your characters to sit in silence. Like there's silences and spaces and moments with the characters. And I noticed a theme of the colors of orange and teal in both projects. I wanted to ask you if like do you think you've developed a particular sense of filmmaking and storytelling throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because like, something like Marriaginalia, which I wrote, and whereas Boathouse I didn't write, I actually find that I often will treat things I don't write kind of differently than things I do write, just because I have like a shorter hand sort of connection to the stuff that I make from scratch. But I think you're still like correct to say that, I do prefer more out of the box kind of work. I do prefer things that are a little bit more strange. I do prefer also to have like really interesting character work, character work that is about somebody sort of grappling with something within themselves too. As a filmmaker, for whatever reason, that seems to be some of the most like provocative and evocative stuff for me. I just like to place people in a bit of an odd situation and see what happens. Um, so yeah, and in terms of a look and a feel, it really depends on the project. Like obviously, Marriaginalia is not a very naturalistic piece. It's pretty heightened. Um, Whereas something like the Boathouse, which again I didn't write, but is a little more grounded. Like we're really living in real life. And even like my previous short that was at TIFF a few years ago, Sucker, like that's also a very grounded piece. So I think it really depends on the tone and the story and the vibe I'm trying to create, because I think I love doing stuff that feels a little odd, but I find that in some ways, like that stuff is less commercial sometimes, so it's like easier to do something like the Boathouse comes around. It's, potentially got funding. So you're going to make it, but it's much more grounded. Whereas it's sometimes more fun to just like take off and do stranger stuff, especially when it's my own work and I have a little more say when it's something as small as a project like this. Yeah.
And coming from you've done both commercial, like for both TV and film, and as you say, like you direct projects that are written by other people. Talk to me about, I think, just a bit about switching between feature and shorts, because I do interview like a lot of filmmakers who make shorts, but for most of the filmmakers that I interview who do shorts are I usually say they're proof of concepts for a lot of for some people, and I also interview like a lot of student filmmakers or people who just graduated from film school, and like the shorts are like their first main project, or even sometimes it's their thesis project. But I find for you it's interesting that you are a commercial award-winning filmmaker. You've been in the film industry for so many years, and you still go back to doing short films. Whereas for a lot of filmmakers, like once they go feature or commercial, they don't really go back to the short film genre. Talk to me about that, because I thought that was very interesting, and because it was good looking through your IMDb. I was like, it's not often that I see filmmakers that do go between both of them, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I think it's a kind of a conversation between like what's available to me in the market and what I desire as a creative. So, I think to your point, when I made the Boathouse, man, 4 or 5 years ago at this point, that was, something that came to me that somebody else wrote. Meanwhile, when I made my short Sucker, which again, at that point in time, honestly, Carolyn, I was like, I'm done. I'm never making another short like before that one. And that one just came to me as a sort of fully formed idea, and I went with it. But I've been trying to get that short into a feature off the ground for 4 years. So it is going on behind the scenes. It's just that for, opportunity to hit, the piece you're making is kind of where the choke points can be that slow things down. So for me, doing something like Marriaginalia, is a chance for me to get some creative ideas composted and metabolized and started, and it's interesting. Like I think about, like Yorgos Lanthimos, the Greek filmmaker. He actually made a short film in between all of his many now feature films. So like that does happen. I think Jasmine Safari, also out of Canada, she just had a short film at TIFF last year, and she, did Firecrackers, 3, 4, I can't remember how many years ago as well. And so I think like it is a phenomenon that happens. And I really do think it has to do with the idea that filmmakers, if you're going to do something like feature films or TV and trying to get a TV show greenlit, these things take literal minimum 3 years. So if one's cool with waiting that long, great. I am tired of waiting that long. And that's one of the reasons I did this, was because like, I just want to make stuff that I love, so that's really like why I'm toggling back and forth. If I could, Carolyn, I would just go straight to the feature films and get them all funded every year. But that's hard. so that's what's going on.
It's very hard, especially in the Canadian industry. Like, for a lot of, especially for independent filmmakers, a lot of them, they depend on like the telefilm grants and, a lot of grants to get these film projects made, because like the market here is so, I think it's kind of unique the way how the Canadian film industry works. And so like for a lot of people is TV is like the usually the easiest way, you know, like because like so many films and so many shows are actually produced here, even if they're not Canadian shows, you know, like using, for instance, The Handmaid's Tale. It's an American production, but it's made here, you know, so like a lot of Canadian filmmakers, like they're like, I gotta sit in the pocket of commercial TV until I can get the funding to make the independent film that I want to make. So and I love that you're like, you know what, I just want to do this, I'm gonna do it. And you're talking about Marginalia now. Talk to me about when you just came up with the idea for this this film, and you're like, I'm gonna do this crazy film, and I'm gonna make it not only a short, but a 3-minute short. You know, it's not even like a 10
I
or
know.
15-minute short. It's like a 3-minute short.
I know. It's nutty. It's nutty. So basically, again, it's like this conversation between the market and one's own creative desires. My commercial production company, so the people who rep me for commercials, they actually are the ones who supported me in making this. They said, you know, we know you want to make something. It's always good to have new work. We know you write professionally, so how about you write a few ideas? They sort of like came on as creative touch point people who, you know, with the ideas gave me feedback and sort of said, we like this one, we like that one, we don't like that one, you know, as I shaped the idea further till it came to this like couple. The couple who are in Marriaginalia. And originally I had like a bunch, like 15 or 20 short ideas. And it really, we homed in on this pair in a sort of creative sense. And then I took that and made another 15 versions of, you know, 1 to 3 page scripts of mini mundane parts of their lives, like making laundry, like cooking, like, you know, the things that you see, the 3 that you see are the ones that I landed on, the ones that I thought were the best, the most interesting, the most funny, that I wanted to tell. But it was an interesting, you know, collaboration between my commercial reps funding, supporting, helping me get this little one made. And it sort of ended up being something that they hope they can use to kind of push me forward for their purposes. Meanwhile, I'm a filmmaker and I'm, you know, going to take this thing that's now this triptych and apply to TIFF and, you know, develop it further and do a feature if I can. Like it's this like combination again of, I wish I had endless funds to make whatever I wanted, but you know, you kind of find how to make it however you can, bootstraps on, you know?
And it's interesting to hear you say that you had to basically workshop this film with your commercial reps, you know, because I think for a lot of people, when they imagine filmmakers writing scripts, they think of filmmakers just at home, sitting at a table, looking all contemplative and deep and thoughtful and writing these stories, you know, or being in a cafe and writing stories. But you're like, nah, like this also happens in like a boardroom, you know, or over a Zoom call with like my representatives. And you're like, we got to workshop this thing. And you know, so I'm just so fascinated by that aspect of making a film.
I agree.
And a short film like this, where you have your reps are saying, we want to do this, we want to support you, but here's our ideas. This is what we want. And you're like, just like not funneling it all down till it comes to this one story. But a lot of people, I think most people have a very big misconception of how films are actually written and made. And I'll blame the media for that. Ironically, the film industry a lot of times is responsible for that, because you'll have filmmakers who will do like a very romanticized version of what writing a script or a screenplay is like. And that's where we get our ideas and misconceptions about the agony of the creative process of making a film.
Yeah. And I mean, there is that agony. Like just today, Carolyn, before we got on this call, I'm over here looking out the window, being contemplative, trying to write this new script. You know what I mean? Like that is a true thing. And it's actually like very lonely. So to have the moments where you have something completed far enough as a written piece that you can take it to people and get feedback is like one of the most glorious moments. And to your point, though, it's like these things don't get created in a vacuum. Again, if I was independently wealthy, it could. I am not. And whether that's telefilm, whether that's your distributor having its points of view, whether that's your producer or the production company or whatever, you know, very rarely, seldomly does somebody get the privilege of really just having their own ideas perfectly intact. Like I don't know, unless you're huge, like who that happens to, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I feel like I really have to be in conversation with people about that, you know, like it's which is nice because then you're not alone. And then you have, if you trust the people, you've got like smart eyes on it, which makes it even better. But that's the ideal, at least, you know?
Yeah, people trust your creative process. And I think for a film like this, the creative trusting is very important, because this this film is basically around a couple, as a husband and wife who do not have names, which I think is interesting. And so the husband is played by Rodrigo Fernandez-Stoll and the wife by Kayla Lorette. And they're in their, everything takes place within their house. The first scene is in their bathroom. No, they're in their bedroom and they're getting ready. You know, she's in her shirt, in her stockings, getting ready to go to work. And he takes off his shirt and he's like, oh, what's this on my back? And it's a giant, ugly, oh, this thing, I will not lie. This thing had made me go, like, and when she said, oh, that was literally that was legit my response as well. And it's just this big, horrendous mole. And he's like, oh, what's this thing? And she's looking and she's like, did that just appear? And I'm like, there's no way that thing just appeared. It's been there sitting, festering for months, years, possibly.
Yeah.
And then it was, and I was grossed out by it. But then I thought about how there's so many things in relationships, not even just in marriages, but in like family relationships and friendships, where something is sitting there and is festering and it's malignant and it's so obvious, but we do our best to ignore it, you know. And then like there's a thing that you do very interesting, and because the film is so short, you have to get straight to the point. And like one of the things the devices you use is poems, you know, like the first one for that scene is one who lives must be prepared for change. And I looked it up, and like I think these poems are perhaps by Johann Goethe, or I could be wrong, but when I typed it in, looked up this thing, that's what I gave. So talk to me about that first scene and using the quotes and the poems to like basically say what needs to be said by these couples, but they're avoiding it. You know, they're having this innocuous conversations, but the poems that you use for each introduction to the scene is what is really saying what needs to be said. It's like, this is the mole, the elephant in the room.
Right. Yeah, that's a really astute perspective. Thank you for noticing all of that. Yeah, I mean, like you won't believe this, or maybe you will. Talk about working with great collaborators again. My editor was actually the one who came up with this idea of having little poems, you know, sayings at the beginning of each one that enlightened and shed further light on the actual scene itself. So blessed to Cam Anderson for coming up with that brilliant little, you know, stroke of insight there. And we like did take, you know, better known sort of sayings and that kind of thing and twisted them and shortened them and, you know, made them kind of into not true to the word of the quote. And but I do think that they frame the thing really nicely because also when you have something that's so superficial seeming, you know, when you have something that's so benign, that's so mundane, it's sort of like it could mean nothing, you know. But those ones just give it a little, the poems just give it a little depth, a little peek under the surface, because ultimately this isn't just superficiality, you know. This is about a couple, or couples generally speaking, or people in relation with one another, you know, avoiding something, or the truisms that run a little bit deeper that don't get said, you know. And I think that play, that tension between the depth versus the superficiality is kind of what makes it sing the whole piece. And you know, and I think also opens and invites the world to, you talked about this before, like proof of concept, like what is beyond this? What is this thing that couples are maybe not looking at? And that is, you know, I'm expanding it with that in mind as I continue to write the feature version of this. So so yeah, I think it just creates like a nice conversation so that you're not just living in the superficiality, but you're like invited to look a little bit deeper.
Yeah, because you're asking us just a bit too close, because the camera really gets right up to this thing. So props to your props masters.
I know.
Makeup department who made that. You grossed me out, so congratulations.
Good. That was the point. Yeah.
Because I'm not a fan of body. I will watch some horror films with body horror, but when there's a point where I'm just like,
I know.
Tap out. But like that made me so uncomfortable to look at. And I think that's the point, because like sometimes it's like when you're in public and like there's a couple arguing and you're just like morbidly curious about it, you're like, I don't want to look, but you can't really look away. So like that kind of made me think of that in a way. It's so gross and just like, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, you can't look away. Totally.
And then the next scene is the wife, she comes home and the husband has his fence cat. I love fence cats. They're so adorably weird looking cats.
Yeah.
And she's like, what's for dinner? He's like, a baked potato. And she's like, a baked potato? And then again, the poems, I love the selection for the poems for that, like, is like the poem for that one is seek first to understand, to be understood. And I'm like, I love that. I would put that on a shirt. Because like, in order for people to understand us, we first need to understand ourselves, and you need to have like a method of communication. Like, and like for this couple, I'm getting a sense like they've been together so long, they think they understand each other but really and truly they clearly don't, because like they're not really listening to the intonations of the words they're saying. They're not reading between the lines anymore. They're just relying on their assumptions of each other. And but it was also funny because it made me think of this TikTok where the girl is like, she's imitating God, and he's like, send the meteor, and he's like, and
right, totally.
The meteor, and then he was like, a meteor, and I'm like, that made me
yeah.
But it talks a lot about language, about like when we don't really listen to what people are saying and we just go by what we think they're saying.
Yeah, totally. Or kind of like glossing over of things, like not getting to the heart of a matter and just sort of accepting it because you're tired or because you're, overwhelmed or because you're annoyed or, bored or just like so used to something, like you're just so used to somebody else that sometimes that's how that, miscommunication can happen. But I think for me, it was like, what's interesting is that I think and it's so cool to hear this, but it's almost like you're tuning into kind of the darker aspects of this, like people who are missing each other and have a long, warm relationship, so they're not connecting and that kind of a thing. And it's so cool to hear that because my intention with it was actually a little more like they love each other so much. This is one of the best relationships that exists on earth because they're still harmonious, like even in spite of all this stuff, So it's just really cool to me to hear an interpretation of it that leans into the kind of darker, like slightly darker piece of it, because that's all there too, it's really cool.
Yeah, no, you can tell they love each other, and like they've been together for years, but it's just like the way I saw it is like it like the film has this tone to me. It's not sinister or dark, but it's almost like we were talking before we began recording, like outside is overcast, but the sun is still shining. But that's the way I see it. Like their warmth, their relationship is warm, but there's just this thing hanging just there, and it's almost sitting at the edge of the frame where it's like there's this thing that they're avoiding and they're not really looking at it, but everything is fine. Good point. So it's such a good point. Film gives me a sense of that.
Yeah. And Carolyn, like what's funny about you saying that is that, I'm the adaptation I'm doing because this is like a grotesque comedy, right? But I'm adapting into like a high concept grotesque horror. So you're really tapping into like the foundational fabric of like, what is beyond that? Like if you were to puncture through that overcast or like not pretend that the sky is out, the sun is out and it's sunny out, like what else is there? So I think you're really reading like quite deeply into their dynamic. Or to your point, they don't have names. Is it every couple's dynamic? Like that's sort of the offer.
Right. Like they don't need to have names. To me, it makes sense that they don't have names because in relationships, like how often do we call each other's names? Like I live with my twin sister and we don't really call each other's names because we're talking to each other consistently. I'll call my sister usually by her nickname. I don't even really call her by her full name unless she's pissed me off. But like I call her by her nickname. But when we inside, like I don't really call her by her name, because I know who I'm talking to because this is the only other person that's around, right? And so like the fact that they don't have names, I'm like, that makes sense because that's how humans communicate. We intrinsically know who we're speaking to, and they're like, totally. So unless it's a ghost, like.
Totally. Yeah, that's such a good point. I remember way back when, like 15 years ago or something, when I was first starting to, get into writing scripts more seriously. Like that was one of the first notes that a producer gave me was like, why are they calling each other by their names so much? People don't do that, But in this case, in this case, it's both that, but also I think intentional. They don't need names. It's not necessary for these people, this dynamic, or these characters.
Yeah, and I was gonna mention the third act, but I think the third act is that's where that little bit of the grotesque comes in, because the two, I'm like, and she puts it back. I'm like, girl, what? But it's. And that, as you said, you're adapting into a feature. I can see that's where the film begins to lean into body horror and the absurd a little bit more. And I'm not really drawing a strict comparison, but if you get a chance to see the film together, the new film
Oh,
with Alison Brie and her husband.
oh, great. Okay.
There,
I'm looking it up right now. I'm like, okay.
there's a and like there's a thing in this film where it talks about couples who are so comfortable
Mm,
together that they leave a lot of things unsaid, because
interesting.
they understand. And the reason I mention that, because your film gives me a sense of like how you are looking into how comfortable being comfortable in a relationship can be actually quite dangerous,
Hmm.
because that's like it's like a pot boiling over, and eventually
Hmm.
there's going to be some big explosion. So your film kind of give me like a sense of like I can see how this could turn into a horror very quickly.
Yeah, totally. And it's like it's you never really see outside. It's all inside. There's like it's almost a little claustrophobic.
Mhm.
It's sort of sealed in itself. Yeah, that's a good point. I can't wait to see that film. Thank you.
No,
Thanks for
yeah,
that.
do it. I will wrap soon because I know you have to go soon. But the last thing I want to talk about is the casting. So talk about casting
Hmm.
Rodrigo and Kayla, because like the film also plays in comedy, in tone, in the way they deliver their lines. In particular, that scene with the baked potato, because it all has to do with
Mm,
inflection and intonation again, and the way they deliver their lines. So talk about working with them and giving these characters the sense of being together for years but still not understanding each other, because I think that's something that
mm.
they really played on with these characters.
Yeah, that's true. So, when I was really starting to hone in on these scripts and like, choose these three, I really did think to myself, like, these are the actors I want to work with. So in my mind, I started to write to the way that I know them because, we know each other from the scene, from the community and have for many years. So I've seen their work many times. So when I started to sort of move into what I imagined their voices to be, I
Mm.
think probably it just allowed them to fit into it even that much more easily. Not that they knew I was doing that, but when I asked, and thank God they said yes, I was like, this is perfect because I already have written this to imagine them in it. And also these two are old friends. They're people who've worked together before. They're both in the comedy scene in a very explicit way. So to have them both agree to come on board, it wasn't therefore much of a reach to get them to lean into the roles that they had. So they brought so much. They brought a kind of warmth and kindness to each other, and while having just like such good pacing. Like I mean, comedy is pacing and timing. So they really were able to land that stuff without much of my interrupting anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of written for them.
Yeah, and I think they did great, because again, the film is 3 minutes long, but they sell so much about this relationship. And again, like I love when I watch short films, and I'm always just like, I want more. And like this
Yeah.
film gives me more, because I want to know like how they got together, like how long have they been together? What does she do? What is her job?
Yeah,
And like
I know.
he's clearly a stay-at-home husband. What made him
Yeah,
decide to become a stay-at-home husband? What's the name of the cat? I'm very curious about all of these things.
totally.
And that big giant potato.
Yeah, yeah. So dumb. I
So
love dumb comedy.
right. And that scene also kind of you mentioned Community. It kind of reminded me a bit of Community. That I can imagine that being a skit
Oh,
in the
funny.
show Community as well, because like
Yeah.
always lean a bit into the surreal and absurd.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
so the film has these. I love when filmmakers are able to insert all of these different themes into short films. In particular, you have the absurd, you have the dramatic, a bit of the romantic, a bit of the grotesque in all of this. And
Hmm.
then there's also like we didn't really talk about it, but just the set design. Um,
Yeah.
like it has almost like a 70s, late 70s
Yeah.
mod feel. And that kind of made me think of how this couple again is stuck in a rut, in a way.
Yeah.
They're
So
stuck in the
true.
past. So it's like they don't even grow past their lives outside might be more modern, but inside the house is very aged and it's very stuck in like time, in like this in this mid point and in limbo in time. Yeah.
Totally. And that was intentional too. Like I didn't want this to be a period piece. Like outside of the world of that we see, who knows? But this is not set in the 70s. This has touches of it. Like everything has been the same for a very long time between them in the world they live in the world they've created together. But it's a contemporary story, even still. So yeah, I
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I
You get
agree.
the sense that it's contemporary, but it's still aged in a way. It's just very much like these people are in a bubble, very much
Yeah.
inside their own home. So They're an
Definitely.
interesting couple.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, yeah, totally.
But hey, we have to go. But thank you so much, Hannah, for taking the time for talking to me today and
Thank you so
giving me a
much.
little bit of sunlight behind you because outside it's
Yeah,
so rare. Like seriously.
yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thanks for your super insightful questions. That was really cool. Yeah,
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah.
And I look forward to seeing this film in features. I hope you do. I hope your developers and your representatives do let you make this into feature. You like see people like this.
See, exactly, exactly. Let me do what I want to do. Yeah, totally. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye. Have a good evening, Anna.
You too. Okay, bye.